Well, returning to the 9-box purpose, process, people model one more time, we want to focus on this middle column. Remember, we're looking at purpose, process, and people with the intersection of what do our customers or service recipients need, what do our employees really need, and what does the business or the organization really need in terms of purpose, process, and people. And as we look at the process column in the middle, of course, customers want our process to work for them. How easy is it for the customer to come and get what they want from us? Is it difficult or is it easy? So, you think about the advent of online purchasing and retailing, the Amazon effect, if you will. Well, one of the things that is the key to that revolution is it's made it much, much easier for people to shop and to get things that previously they would have to, get dressed, get in the car, go out in public, go into a store, find what they want, pick it up, take it to a checkout counter, pay for it, and then bring it out to their car and haul it home. And with the advent of online, you don't even have to get dressed. You just get on your computer, get on the shopping site, order it, and sometimes in a matter of a day or so, it shows up at your door. And so that's an idea of process that is appealing to the customer, and customers are always wanting to be able to pull value in an easier and easier way. You want to make it simple for them. And so is our process really designed for that? And if our process isn't designed for that, then customers are not going to be happy. And we'll have a hard time fulfilling our mission, which is going to be some form of bringing some kind of value to some sort of customer. What employees want in all that with the process is ability to collaborate. And that has a lot to do with this topic of change. And what leaders can do for their employees or volunteers is to create an environment where that collaboration is fostered, it's facilitated, it happens. It can happen easily. So very much like the customer trying to get their value, their product, their value in as painless a way as possible. We want people to be able to collaborate in as painless a way as possible. And so depending on your organization, that might mean a lot of different things. It might mean co-location of groups. It might mean creating a particular type of workspace. It might mean creating workspaces that allow people to collaborate and share quite easily without having to do a whole lot of setup or hassle. It might mean electronic, technological infrastructure and tools that allow people from all over the world potentially to collaborate easily. There's not one right answer for that, but certainly thinking about how people can work together more clearly, more closely is important to our process. And here's why: because change is inevitable. Like some kind of change is going to happen. If you don't change at all in your process, then you won't be a long-term viable organization, because somebody else will change things. So like I said, like the Amazon effect, people seen as a threat to big box stores, but now a lot of those stores are pushing back and changing their process. And then certainly a big part of change in the process area is this idea of continuous improvement or process design, process management. Our processes have to be ever improving, or they're actually getting worse, because as technology and society continues to accelerate, change and progress, some people don't see it as progression, I guess, but progress at an ever accelerating rate, if our organizations aren't keeping up in the process, then you're falling behind. And so you really, if you want to stay even, you have to keep improving. And there's no such thing as maintaining the status quo. You're either getting better or you're getting worse. Just ask anyone who's worked on their fitness or trying to lose weight or something like that. There's really no maintenance mode. You go into maintenance mode and you're probably losing ground. So what does this have to do with leadership? Leadership has to be concerned about this whole thing. How are our processes helping us fulfill our purpose? How are our processes working to serve our people so that we can fulfill our process? How are our processes improving on a regular basis? And I'll just say this about the continuous improvement to help us execute flawlessly. That's the big goal. Is that change is often very disruptive, and so we've looked at some change management issues and ideas. People become resistant to change. Those are a number of things that concern us, and yet change is inevitable. Change is mandatory. Change is something we can tell ourselves we're not going to do, but in fact it will happen to us if we're not driving the change. But the interesting thing about change is we can resist it for a time, and then it will overtake us and require a very large effort to cope with all the stuff that we haven't been dealing with. Or we can begin to implement many small changes. Every day we improve something really small, really tiny, but things are always changing, and we are driving the change. We are leading the change. We're in control of the change to the extent that we can be. Then it's much less of a change management burden. A small change that happens every day is not perceived as change to people. Every day I wear a shirt, but every day I don't wear the same shirt. And if every day I wear the same shirt, and then one day that shirt, is finally worn out and falls off of me, I'll have a major change management issue to try to adopt my comfort with a brand new shirt. But if every day I'm wearing a different shirt, then one of those shirts wears out and it gets replaced with a new shirt, I don't really think of that as a change. I wear a shirt every day. It's not the same shirt. Maybe a silly example, but if you think about that in our organizations, if every day what I do is change, then it no longer really is perceived as change. An example from my manufacturing background that I'll tell quickly was in the shoemaking business. The standard approach to manufacture a product is to try to make the same thing, set up a production line that makes the same thing without any changes for as long as possible, over and over and over again. If you have a shoe, it comes in probably 15 different sizes. Every one of those sizes means you have to change. You're making a size 9, now you're going to make a size 9.5. Well, you have to have the parts that are the half size bigger. You have to have molds, presses, pads, all sorts of things that change in the shoemaking process when you move from one size to another. And so what the typical shoe factory would do traditionally is set up their line to run the sizes. People in this world are that's kind of on a bell curve. So like a men's size 9, there's a lot of them. Men's size 10, there's a lot of them. Men's size 6, there's not as many. Men's size 18 or whatever the biggest size is, not very many. So it's kind of a bell curve. So they would make those heart sizes because the manufacturing line would run very efficiently. We're going to make size 9 for the next 3 days. So you set everything up to do 9s. Everyone's just going and making the shoes, cranking them out. And then you have this very inefficient period where you switch from the 5s to the 6s to the 12 or to the 14s and 14.5s and 15s and so on. And these little short size runs where you have to do lots and lots of disruptive change. One of the things that I experienced while working in a lean manufacturing initiative with shoe factories was an experiment we did saying, what if, and the Japanese call this principle haijunka, which simply means a little bit of everything throughout the day, every day. If we make a shoe in 15 different sizes, then instead of making one of those sizes all day long, we should make all 15 sizes over and over and over again throughout the day. Now that to most traditional manufacturers sounds like lunacy. You'll be spending more time changing things in the production line than you will be actually producing shoes. But we attack that to say we need to make all those changes happen smoothly, seamlessly, without taking up any time, without slowing down the production. We should still be able to make pair after pair after pair after pair of shoes, but all in different sizes, being able to shift press pads, material size, all kinds of things, put them in control of the people making the shoes so that they could change over in 0 time. Basically, it takes them no more time to switch sizes than it does to make the same size. And it was amazingly not that hard to do. And what we found was that people who experienced that liked that new way so much better than the old way. And as we began to talk to workers on the production line, people on the production line told us when we did it the old way, when we made the same thing over and over and over again for long production runs, then what would happen is very disruptive. You guys would come down and say there's been an order change. We need to make a few more size 10s. Well, we finished making the size 10s yesterday. We've switched to the size 11s. We're busily making those, but you need a few more 10s. So now we're going to have to go through all this changeover again, an additional time. Whereas now, when we make all the sizes over and over and over throughout the day, we make them on a mix. And so we might make 4 or 5 size 9s and then in an hour, and we might make 1 size 6 in an hour, and we might make 3 size 10s in an hour. Whatever the bell curve is, we make that ratio over and over again all throughout the day. So if you come down and say there's been an order change in the mix, we need to make a few more of this size, a few less of that size, we simply change that distribution. We just change that, and nobody does anything different. We're just going from size to size like we always do. So what previously had been a changing from one size to the other, was now viewed as not change. If we change sizes, that's just what we do. It's not change anymore. And I was quite struck by that, because we actually inflicted many times more changes into the production line by going to every size, every hour kind of production schedule. And yet, people's perception of it was, now we don't change at all. We never change. We do the same thing. And so that's the nature of change and improvement. And as leaders, we need to grasp that. How can we create an environment where the changes we will need to make, more and more of the changes that we can imagine we will need to make as time goes on, become commonplace. They become built-in part of what we do, so that even though technically I guess they're a change, they don't really have that effect on people. They're not really perceived as change. That's just what we do. Okay, so that's the purpose, process, people, construct again. Again, you don't want to work on this column in isolation. As a leader, you want to make sure the way you do it and what you're doing really fits with your purpose and really serves your people.